we were faced by a horde. "I would be grateful," Agricola said acidly, as though the thought of gratitude was utterly alien to his thinking, "if you did not bruit the numbers about. We've had desertions enough already. More, and we might as well dig our own graves." "No deserters from my men," I insisted. "No," he allowed. "Not yet." He stood and took his short Roman sword from where it hung on a tent pole, then paused in the doorway from where he cast a baleful eye towards the enemy hills. "Men say you're a friend of Merlin." "Yes, Lord." "Will he come?" "I don't know, Lord." Agricola grunted. "I pray he does. Someone needs to talk sense into this army. All commanders are summoned to Magnus tonight. A council of war." He said it bitterly, as though he knew that such councils produced more quarrels than comradeship. "Be there by sunset." Galahad came with me. Nimue stayed with my men, for her presence gave them confidence, and I was glad she did not come, for the council was opened by a prayer from Bishop Conrad of Gwent, who seemed imbued with defeatism as he begged his god to give us strength to face the overmighty foe. Galahad, his arms spread in the Christian pose of prayer, murmured along with the bishop, while we pagans grumbled that we should not pray for strength but victory. I wished we had some druids among us, but Tudric, a Christian, employed none, and Belize, the old man who had attended Mordred's acclamation, had died during the first winter I was in Benwick. Agricola was right to hope that Merlin would come, for an army without druids was giving away an advantage to its enemy. There were some 40 or 50 men at the council, all of us chieftains or leaders. We met in the bare stone hall of Magnus's bathhouse that reminded me of Innis Widren's church. King Tudric, Arthur, Agricola, and Tudric's son, the Edling Murig, sat at a table on a stone dais. Murig had grown into a pale, thin creature who looked unhappy in his ill-fitting Roman armour. He was just old enough to fight, but with his nervous air he looked very unfit for battle. He blinked constantly, as if he had just come into sunlight from a very dark room, and he kept fidgeting with a heavy gold cross that hung around his neck. Arthur alone of the commanders was not in war gear, but looked relaxed in his countryman's clothes. The warriors cheered and stamped their spear butts when King Tudric announced that the Saxons were believed to have withdrawn from the eastern frontier. But that was the last cheering for a long while that night, because Agricola then stood and gave his blunt assessment of the two armies. He did not list all the enemy's smaller contingents, but even without those additions it was clear that Gorfithid's army would outnumber ours by 2 to 1. "We'll just have to kill twice as fast," Morfan shouted from the back. He had returned the scale armour to Arthur, swearing that only a hero could wear that armour of metal and still fight. Agricola ignored the interruption, adding instead that the harvest should be complete in a week, and that the levies of Gwent would then swell our numbers. No one seemed too cheered by that news. King Tudric proposed that we should fight Gorfithid under the walls of Magnus. "Give me a week," he said, "and I will so fill this fortress with the new harvest that Gorfithid will never pitch us out. Fight here." He gestured towards the dark beyond the hall doors. "And if the battle goes ill, we pull inside the gates and let them waste their spears on wooden palisades." It was the way of war Tudric preferred, and had long perfected. Siege warfare, where he could use the work of long-dead Roman engineers to frustrate spears and swords. A murmur of agreement sounded in the room, and that murmur swelled when Tudric told the council that Ael might well be planning to attack Rattay. "Hold Gorfithid here," one man said, "and he'll run back north when he hears Ael's coming through his back door." "Ael will not fight my battle." Arthur spoke for the first time, and the room became still. Arthur seemed embarrassed at having spoken so firmly. He smiled apologetically at King Tudric, and asked exactly where the enemy forces were gathered. Arthur already knew, of course, but he was asking the question so that the rest of us would hear the answer. Agricola answered for Tudric. "The forward men are strung between Coleshill and Caer Lud," he said, "while the main army gathers at Branogenium. More men are marching from Caer Sus." The names meant little to us, but Arthur seemed to understand the geography. "So they guard the hills between us and Branogenium." "Every pass," Agricola confirmed, "and every hilltop." "How many at Lug Vale?" Arthur asked. "At least 200 of their best spearmen. They're not fools, lord," Agricola added sourly. Arthur stood. He was at his best at these councils, easily dominating crowds of fractious men. He smiled at us. "The Christians will understand this best," he said, subtly flattering the men most likely to oppose him. "Imagine a Christian cross. Here at Magnus we are at the foot of the cross. The cross's shaft is the Roman road that runs north from Magnus to Branogenium, and the crosspiece is made by the hills that bar that road. Coleshill is at the left of the crosspiece, Caer Lud at the right, and Lug Vale is at the cross's centre. The vale is where the road and river pass through the hills." He walked out from behind the table and perched himself on its front so he was closer to his audience. "I want you to think about something," he said. The flame light from the becketed torches cast shadows on his long cheeks, but his eyes were bright and his tone energetic. "Everyone knows we must lose this battle," he said. "We are outnumbered. We wait here for Gorfethid to attack us. We wait, and some of us become dispirited and carry our spears home. Others fall ill, and all of us brood on that great army gathering in the bowl of the hills around Branogenium. And we try not to imagine our shield wall outflanked, and the enemy coming at us from 3 sides at once. But think of the enemy. They wait too. But as they wait, they get stronger. Men come from Cornovia, from Elmet, from Demetia, from Gwynedd. Landless men come to gain land, and masterless men to take plunder. They know they will win, and they know we wait like mice trapped by a tribe of cats." He smiled again and stood up. "But we're not mice. We have some of the greatest warriors ever to lift a spear. We have champions." The cheering began. "We can kill cats, and we know how to skin them too. But—" That last word stopped the next cheer just as it began. "But," Arthur went on, "not if we wait here to be attacked. Wait here behind Magnus's walls, and what happens? The enemy will march around us. Our homes, our wives, our children, our lands, our flocks, and our new harvest become theirs, and all we become are mice in a trap. We must attack, and attack soon." Agricola waited for the Dumnonian cheers to die. "Attack where?" he asked sourly. "Where they least expect it, lord. In their strongest place. Lug Vale. Straight up the cross, straight to the heart." He held up a hand to stop any cheering. "The Vale is a narrow place," he said, "where no shield line can be outflanked. The road fords the river north of the valley." He was frowning as he spoke, trying to remember a place he had seen only once in his life, but Arthur had a soldier's memory for terrain, and only needed to see a place once. "We would need to put men on the western hill to stop their archers raining arrows down, but once in the vale, I swear we cannot be moved." Agricola objected. "We can hold there," he agreed. "But how do we fight our way in? They have 200 spearmen there, maybe more. But even 100 men can hold that valley all day. By the time we've fought to the vale's far end, Gorfethid will have brought his horde down from Branogenium. Worse, the Black Shield Irish who garrison Coleshill can march south of the hills and take our rear. We might not be moved, lord, but would be killed where we stand." "The Irish on Coleshill don't matter," Arthur said carelessly. He was excited and could not stay still. He began pacing up and down the dais, explaining and cajoling. "Think, I beg you, Lord King," he spoke to Tudrick. "What happens if we stay here? The enemy will come. We shall retreat behind impregnable walls, and they will raid our lands. By midwinter, we'll be alive, but will anyone else in Gwent or Dumnonia still live? No. Those hills south of Brenogenium are Gorfethid's walls. If we breach those walls, he has to fight us, and if he fights in Lugvale, he is a defeated man. His 200 men in Lugvale will stop us," Agricola insisted. "They will vanish like the mist," Arthur proclaimed confidently. "They are 200 men who have never faced armoured horse in battle." Agricola shook his head. "The Vale is barred by a wall of felled trees. Armoured horse will be stopped." He paused to ram his fist into an upraised palm. "Dead." He said the word flatly, and the finality of his tone made Arthur sit. There was the smell of defeat in the hall. From outside the baths, where the blacksmiths worked day and night, I heard the hiss of a newly forged blade being quenched in water.
"Perhaps I might be permitted to speak?"
The speaker was Murig, Tudrick's son. He had a strangely high voice, almost petulant in its tone, and he was evidently short-sighted, for he screwed up his eyes and cocked his head whenever he wanted to look at a man in the main part of the hall.
"What I would like to ask,"
he said, when his father had given him permission to address the council,
"is why we fight at all."
He blinked rapidly when the question was asked. No one answered. Maybe we were all too astonished at the question.
Allow me to explain,"
Murig said in a pedantic tone. He might have been young, but he possessed the confidence of a prince, though I found the false modesty with which he cloaked his pronouncements irritating.
"We fight Gorfethid, correct me if I'm wrong, out of our long-standing alliance with Dumnonia. That alliance has served us well, I doubt not, but Gorfethid, as I understand it, has no designs upon the Dumnonian throne."
A growl came from we Dumnonians, but Arthur held up his hand for silence, then gestured for Murig to continue. Murig blinked and tugged at his cross.
"I just wonder why we fight. What, if I might phrase it thus, is our casus belli?"
"Cow's belly?" Keelock shouted. Keelock had seen me when I arrived and had crossed the hall to welcome me. Now he put his mouth close to my ear. "Bastards have got thin shields, Derval," he said, "and they're looking for a way out." Arthur stood again and spoke courteously to Murig. "The cause of the war, Lord Prince, is your father's oath to preserve King Mordred's throne, and King Gorfethid's evident desire to take that throne from my king." Murig shrugged.
But correct me, please, I beg you. But as I understand these things, Gorfethid does not seek to dethrone King Mordred."
"You know that?" Keelock shouted.
"There are indications,"
Murig said irritably. "Bastards have been talking to the enemy," Keelock whispered in my ear. "Ever had a knife in the back, Derval? Arthur's getting one now." Arthur stayed calm. "What indications?" he asked mildly. King Tudrick had stayed silent as his son spoke, evidence that he had given his permission for Murig to suggest, however delicately, that Gorfethid should be appeased rather than confronted. But now, looking old and tired, the king took control of the hall. "There are no indications, Lord, upon which I would want to depend my strategy. Nevertheless," and when Tudrick pronounced that word so emphatically, we all knew Arthur had lost the debate. "Nevertheless, Lord, I am convinced that we need not provoke Powys unnecessarily. Let us see whether we cannot have peace." He paused, almost as if he feared the word would anger Arthur, but Arthur said nothing. Tudrick sighed. "Gorfethid fights," he said slowly and carefully, "because of an insult done to his family.